Hello and welcome. My name is Matt, and I'm just some guy on the internet. Today we're going to talk about 4 tips that you can use to enhance your D&D sessions as a Dungeon Master or Game Master. These are pretty general suggestions, but I plan to dive a little deeper into many of these ideas in the future, so make sure you subscribe with notifications on so that you never miss out. Just as a quick note, many of these ideas are intended for virtual sessions as a way to supplement and improve your virtual play experience, since that's what I do. But many of these ideas also apply to in-person games, so feel free to take these and apply them there as well. The first tip: use artwork to supplement your descriptions. One of the most amazing things about being a DM, one of my personal favorite things, is creating the scene for your players to move around in. I love writing that rich descriptive language and telling them where the trees are, where the buildings are, how the scene is laid out in front of them, so that they can navigate the imaginary scene that we're all in together more effectively. I like to see the reaction on their faces as they move about the scene and explore it. It's very enjoyable to me. But maybe that's not your thing. Or maybe you enjoy it, but your writing skills aren't quite where you'd like them to be. That's all right. One of the ways that you can help this is to use artwork that you find to supplement your verbal descriptions. Now, to be clear, I'm not advocating theft of anyone's artwork. If you have the opportunity, you should definitely try to give an acknowledgement or get the permission of the artist before you use their work. This is especially true if you are live streaming your game or if you're putting it on the internet or somewhere else and you're trying to gain awareness for yourself as a result. Using someone else's artwork without their permission is wrong in that kind of context. However, if you're just playing a game with your friends and nobody's ever gonna see it, it's just you all on Roll20, I don't think it's that big a deal to grab some artwork that you find off of Google and use it as a supplementary image to go along with your description. It can help the players who are a little more visually oriented focus in on what's actually happening in the scene. This is particularly true if you're live streaming, like I do my game, Baggage Claim D&D. You can follow us, link in the description below, every Saturday at 5:30 Pacific time. Just like you wouldn't want someone to take your character, your stories, your hard work, and use them without your permission, you shouldn't do that with someone else's artwork also. Artists spend a lot of time creating their masterpieces. And again, if you have the option, if you have the chance, if you can, you should give credit to that artist whenever possible and get their permission before you use their work. Adding this artwork in Roll20 is incredibly simple to do. It's very easy. And look out for my Roll20 tutorial for map making and those kinds of things later on in the future for a guide on how to accomplish that. However, a word of caution: artwork cannot replace your descriptions. If you just throw up a piece of artwork and you say, that's where we are, your players aren't going to know what the important points within the scene are, where they should explore, what they should look for. That's what your verbal cues are really for. On the one hand, yes, they are fun to add a lot of description and give life to the scene, but on the other, what you're doing with the description is really showing your characters where they should look, where they should explore the scene, what things are available to them that they should take note of. After all, you are acting as the DM, as the player's eyes and ears. They only know what you tell them. If you don't tell them that there's a dead body hidden in the closet, through the smell or sight or maybe blood running out the bottom, they're not gonna know. So you as the DM have to give your verbal description on top of whatever artwork you use in order to fully round out the scene for your players. It doesn't have to be long, only maybe a paragraph or 2 is sufficient for many scenes, but you have to actually give a verbal description. You have to give some kind of description to your players if you want them to really understand what's happening. If you want a little help in writing descriptive scenes, check out my video on writing descriptive scenes. It's a kind of a how-to guide in what you should do, what kinds of things are appropriate, how long it should be, all of that stuff. Check that out, link in the description below. All right, that's enough about that. On to the next point. Use cameras. If you're playing a virtual game, you've definitely experienced players interrupting each other, players maybe losing track of what's going on in a scene, or just disengaging from the game altogether. The cause for many of these is that you are virtual and not in person. As much as we may not like to admit it, people act differently when they're around people in person versus on the internet. Everyone knows any YouTube comment section is a great example of that. While you're not Big Brother trying to snoop into your players' lives, watching them all hours of the day and night, having their camera on can help people feel a sense of accountability and presence. You put a lot of effort into creating this world that you want your players to interact in and explore. Being able to see your players' reactions when you drop that big knowledge bomb or you reveal the big bad is so gratifying and definitely rewarding. And if you're playing a virtual game, everyone can do this. If you're playing on a laptop, you have a webcam in the laptop. If you're playing on a cell phone, you have a camera on the cell phone. And if not, you can get a relatively cheap webcam for maybe 20, 30 bucks, and it will really add to the experience of playing with one another. In the same way, your players being able to see your reactions and your responses as you're delivering a really vivid piece of description or maybe acting out as an NPC will help them to connect with you more fully in the game. This also helps them to become more immersed and involved in the story and feel like they're really a part of it, rather than just listening to a bunch of disembodied voices kind of speaking in their ears. Having cameras on also helps your players to interact with each other in more meaningful ways. Especially during emotional scenes, it can be difficult to connect with another person if you can't see their expression. You don't really know what they're feeling, you don't know how they're reacting, but if you have a camera on, it's not the best, but it's at least a way that you can see the person's reaction. You can see their emotional state on their face, and then you can react accordingly. That's one of the fun parts about Dungeons & Dragons is acting out a character. If you can't ever see another player that you're playing with, you're gonna have a tough time really emoting those things that you're feeling. There are so many options for using cameras in a virtual game, there's almost no reason not to. As I mentioned before, if you have a laptop or a cell phone, you have the camera there. There are also lots of software solutions like Google Hangouts, Zoom, even Roll20, Discord. All of those have camera options built into them already. They're very easy to use, super simple to get started with and get things set up so that you can see each other as you're playing. So help you to feel close as a group. Maybe you were separated by the pandemic. Maybe you are just players from different states or different areas of the world. Having those cameras on will help you feel close to your friends once again, which is a great experience. Now, it may feel a little awkward at first putting yourself on camera, especially if you're camera shy or you don't like people watching you. Maybe you feel nervous or shy about your descriptions or your writing. But once you get used to it, the experience is really, truly rewarding. It will also help to show your players how hard you've worked on the story that you're putting in front of them. This leads to the next point. Make custom maps. If you're playing online, you're likely using one of the online virtual tabletops like Roll20, that's what I use, or something else, in order to keep track of everything that's happening in a scene, especially during combat. Unless you're one of those monsters with a Mega Man-sized brain and you can keep track of it all in your head, you're gonna need to use something like this in order to keep track of just what exactly is happening. Combat can be chaotic. It can be very difficult to track what's going on without this kind of aid. I think a lot of DMs think of combat in a kind of limited sense, as if it's some kind of separate thing from the rest of the story, but it doesn't have to be. You can use combat to tell more of the story. By making a custom map, you not only show your players that you really care about what's happening during combat, you can also create encounters that guide the flow of the situation into the solution that you're looking for or that you want to draw out as a DM, as a storyteller. Taking time to build your own maps and custom make the scenarios can really help your players to feel like you actually care about what's going on in combat and help them to get more involved in the process. Plus, if you're using something like Roll20, it's super easy to build your own map. It's very simple. Once you get the hang of it, you can make a really complicated, nice looking map in about 10 minutes. If you want to see how to do that, check out my map making tutorial in the description below. Building your own maps also shows your players that you really care about the story in all its aspects, not just the emotional moments, not just the combat moments, but that you think of it as a whole cohesive piece. Now, grabbing something pre-made or off of Google is totally fine once in a while. Sometimes you don't have time, sometimes you're working too much, sometimes you just don't feel like making a map. I get it. But making something that's custom for your players will really go that extra mile and help to bring your game to the next level. It also allows you to add things in like the changing seasons or maybe a time of day, things like what happened on the battlefield that is custom for your game. Maybe you use unicorns a lot in your game and you can't find any maps with unicorns on them. Well, if you make your own, you can implement those things very easily into the map. This further helps to capture a specific mood for a fight that you're looking for. This is incredibly important when you're going up against a big bad, but any kind of enemy that has resonated with the players, you can do this in. Speaking of moods, this brings us to the most important point on the list. Use music. Music is by far, without a doubt, the most impactful thing that you can add to your D&D game. If you're not using music right now, start using music. Adding music will elevate your game to the next level. Writing and artwork and descriptive paragraphs and all of that have their place, yes, and they are definitely critically important, but nothing quite compares with the feeling of an emotional piece of music dropping at the exact right moment, of setting the tone around a scene that can really shape the conversation, shape the mood and the expressions of your character. Adding music that fits will help make those emotional moments even more impactful and meaningful and memorable for your players and characters. The good use of a tragic song at an important moment, maybe a character has died, will cement that memory in your players' minds, and anytime they hear that song in the future, they'll think of that moment. The same goes for villains and other important notable NPCs. You anime fans out there, you know this all the time. Every time that the villain song comes on, you know he's about to come out. Anytime the hero's power-up song comes on, you know that he's about to ascend to a new level of power. You can do this too. It's not like you're limited from doing these things. All you've got to do is find the music and apply it. Giving an NPC or a villain a theme song is a great way to show the importance of that character. Now, obviously, you can't do this for every shopkeep and bartender, but what you can do is for the very important characters, the really notable ones, you can take the time to find a song that fits them. It doesn't have to be huge and grandiose, a big 10-minute song every time they come out, but what you can do is just have it softly playing in the background. And that way, every time that they hear that song, they'll associate it with that character. Then, if you're in an important battle or you're in a tight situation and you play that song, your characters will know, we have this ally coming to help us. Or they'll feel the dread of that villain coming after them. You can also use subtle shifts in music to really influence the mood or tone of a conversation or meeting. Think about if your players are meeting with a mob boss versus meeting with a shopkeeper who is kind of cantankerous. Changing the mood by adjusting the music only slightly will help your players to feel more immersed in the moment, and it can also show when that conversation goes from pleasant and kind to hostile and violent. For example, let's say that your party has ventured into a new town and they're looking around for jobs. They go to the job board and they speak with the guildmaster nearby about this strange sight of goblins in the cornfields. The guildmaster says, so you've come to ask about the rumors of goblins in the cornfield. Well, let me tell you. All was fine in the Cornmeister's fields until about 2 months ago, a meteor struck and destroyed the sacred altar. Since then, the Cornmeister's workers have gone missing every Wednesday night, only their feet and ears remaining. The guildmaster says, so you've come to ask about the rumors of goblins in the cornfield. Well, let me tell you. All was fine in the Cornmeister's fields until about 2 months ago, a meteor struck and destroyed the sacred altar. Since then, the Cornmeister's workers have gone missing every Wednesday night, only their feet and ears remaining. The guildmaster says, so you've come to ask about the rumors of goblins in the cornfield. Well, let me tell you. All was fine in the Cornmeister's fields until about 2 months ago, a meteor struck and destroyed the sacred altar. Since then, the Cornmeister's workers have gone missing every Wednesday night, only their feet and ears remaining. The guildmaster says, so you've come to ask about the rumors of goblins in the cornfield. Well, let me tell you. All was fine in the Cornmeister's fields until about 2 months ago, a meteor struck and destroyed the sacred altar. Since then, the Cornmeister's workers have gone missing every Wednesday night, only their feet and ears remaining. See how each of these felt different even though the situations were all exactly the same? Your players will pick up on these kinds of differences very quickly, and the music is what brings that to light. This change in tone is especially important for combat music. It can be easy for players to check out during combat when it's not their turn. After all, combat is long, and waiting 20 minutes and trying to stay focused between your turns can be challenging. Consider making different playlists all the way from easy peasy up to epic boss battle, and changing the mood of a fight in the midst of it will help to keep your players engaged and involved in the story. In addition, music helps to cover up those awkward bits of no dialogue when you're playing online, when people are deciding when they should talk, or they're just not quite sure of what to say, or maybe they're snacking or eating. Having a bit of music helps to fill in the gaps and make the world feel more full of life and real, rather than just a bunch of people awkwardly sitting on cameras together in their own separate rooms in their apartments. In real life, life, we constantly have noise around us all the time. Even if you're inside, you hear a fan blowing, or you hear the building creaking that you're in, or you hear the wind blowing against the windows on the outside. There's always noise around us all the time. And so if you're playing in a game and you have noise canceling headphones on, and all you hear are the voices of the other people, it starts to feel pretty cold and empty. Adding music will really help to liven up the experience altogether. There are lots and lots and lots of different techniques to add in music to your games, everything from Spotify to YouTube playlists to Soundtail to Roll20. Soundtail's my favorite. And if you want to see a comparison of my favorite methods or the methods that I've tried out, there's a link in the description below for that video. It's not like a scientific comparison or anything, it's just what I like and don't like about each of the platforms. I know a lot of people have wanted to use music and they haven't really known the best way to do so I figured I'd give a comparison. Music is an amazing tool that you can use that will really help to elevate your video to the next level. However, just like with artwork, you should not use any music that you find without the artist's permission. If you're doing a home game, maybe not that big a deal. You can just throw it on the CD player and use whatever music you want. Nobody's gonna know. However, as with artwork, you shouldn't use any music that you don't have the permission to use. Not only does it have the same issues as before, but your videos will get copyright claimed faster than your party can derail the story that you've so carefully prepared. I think that's gonna do it for this video. Don't forget to use all the tools that you have available. Use music, use artwork, make your own maps, and most of all, have fun. Hopefully this video gave you some helpful tips, and let me know what ways you bring your game to the next level so that I can steal them for my game in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and check out my D&D stream on the Baggage Claim D&D channel, linked in the description below, every Saturday at 5:30 Pacific time. And I'll see you in the next one.